Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Iskon Gurvind ki, Prabhupada ki, Untitled Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sai Gaur Premanand. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, Volume 6, Uniting Two Worlds, chapter entitled I've Done My Part. Now Swarup Damodar had come for more association with Srila Prabhupada, and after offering obeisances, he presented Srila Prabhupada with several pink lotus flowers. Srila Prabhupada took one in his hand and opened the petals. The others he gave to his secretary for presenting to the deities. Swarup Damodar had also brought several ripe pineapples, and Prabhupada immediately asked for a glass of fresh pineapple juice. Swarup Damodar was arranging for a conference of scientists in Vrindavan to discuss the origin of life. He had been meeting with various scientists and professors, many of whom had shown interest in Swarup Damodar's approach and in participating in the conference. Swarup Damodar read Prabhupada the prospectus he had prepared announcing the upcoming conference. Prabhupada listened silently and then said, "All glories to Swarup Damodar." Later in the afternoon, they spoke again. It seemed that Prabhupada was never too tired or too indisposed to speak with Swarup Damodar about defeating materialistic science. Swarup Damodar was getting hope from his conversations with scientists. He told Prabhupada, "I think they're interested in the program we're making, otherwise they wouldn't take time to discuss. Some of them feel our approach is unique." "There is no other such proposal," said Prabhupada. "They have taken God as something mystical, especially this rascal Darwin's theory. They have become like animals, and they are seeing everyone as animals. This rascal has convinced them your grandfather was a monkey. How could they become the son of a monkey? But this is going on. The grand rascal is Darwin, and his theory is taken as the greatest principle of anthropology in the whole world. So scientists, by combined meeting, should speak out against the Darwin's theory." So Prabhupada ki. So Prabhupada was very pleased with this unique approach. And then Swarup Damodar, you can hear conversations with Srila Prabhupada and Swarup Damodar. Life Comes from Life. There's the book, which is mainly conversations between Swarup Damodar, or Dr. Singh, as he's known, and Srila Prabhupada, discussing things like these incomplete and bogus suppositions of the origins of life. And because of Swarup Damodar, the Bhaktivedanta Institute was formed, where scientific-minded devotees were able to speak regarding these theories of evolution. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 15, entitled The Descendants of King Priyavrata, Text 8. Tajimam gatam pandaveya puravida upagayanti. Translation, my dear King Parikit, those who are learned scholars in the histories of the Puranas eulogize and glorify King Gaya. The following verses. Srila Prabhupada's purport. The historical references to exalted kings serve as a good example for present rulers. Those who are ruling the world at the present moment should take lessons from King Gaya, King Yudhishthira, and King Prithu, and rule the citizens so that they will be happy. Presently, the governments are levying taxes without improving the citizens in any cultural, religious, social, or political way. According to the Vedas, this is not recommended. Om Agana Tamarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakrunutam Yana Tasma Shigurave Maha Tam Karoti Vachalam Bhagam Lagayate Grim Yatkripatamaham Bande Shigurim Dimtaranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. My dear King Parikit, those who are learned scholars in the histories of the Puranas eulogize and glorify King Gaya with the following verses. So this is explaining how the leaders of society, they should be so well behaved and such a great example that they will go down in history, that the people have a great affection for them, and everybody feels benefited by their service. And nowadays, because pravritti-cha, nivritti-cha, people do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Therefore, they can't even tell a good example from a bad example. Even if someone is a good example, they won't see it. And if they do see it, they are so accustomed to bad habits, they don't even want to follow it. So an interesting story. Srila Prabhupada was in India on a train journey, and for us, we would probably consider it a nuisance that you can't get any peace anywhere you go. But Prabhupada, wherever he went, people would always come and ask him questions. So this man, he came and he was asking some questions. Prabhupada says, you need to follow Krishna's example, which is approach a bona fide spiritual master and surrender unto him, he will make submissive inquiries. Tadri pranipatina pariprashnina sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam jnaninas tatvadarshnaha. Try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, and render service unto him. Self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he's seen the truth. So this man was saying, yes, yes, yes. But nowadays it's very hard to find pure devotee. So Prabhupada says, so what is a pure devotee? And the man couldn't answer. He says, so you do not know what is a pure devotee, but you cannot find it. He says, therefore you're cheating. You're a rascal. Because you don't want to find pure devotee, because if you find one, then you have to surrender. So I can't find. It's like the child is maybe, not exactly the best example, but the child has been naughty and the mother says, go and find that stick so I can punish you. Well, I can't find it. We don't want to find it because we don't want to face up to it. So, we don't. So he says, actually, there are many pure devotees on the planet right now, but because you don't want to surrender to Krishna, therefore you cannot find. Even if it's there, because we're so accustomed to avoiding Krishna, we can sense that. And we just, oops, this is getting too dangerous. This is going to affect my misuse of independence. Let me just make up some philosophy that I can't surrender. Or let me just say, I can't find. What does it say? There's none so blind as those who don't want to see. So there's that example of if you're sleeping and you're actually sleeping and someone comes to wake you up, then you'll react. But if you're pretending you're sleeping, the alarm's going off, it's 4:15, you don't want to get up, and someone's shouting, Haribol, it's time to get up for Mangalarti. And you're just lying there, Haribol, and still lying there. And you can see the person's breathing, so you know they're not dead. But none so, what do you say? None so blind as those who don't want to see. So we can be like that as we don't want to see, therefore we can't see. And we don't want to see because of the eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Defending, Prabhupada said, is the most difficult one to give up. We might think it's the other ones because we're attached to these things, but defending is because it's defending our false ego, defending our misuse of independence. So this is called Nityabada, eternally conditioned. So it's not that the living entity is actually being conditioned forever, but so long that it's almost untraceable. But when the living entity experiences frustration in the material world, then they come to the point of Karpanya, Dosho, Pahata, Swabhava, Prachami, Tvam, Dharma, Samida, Chaitanya, Shri Shan, Nishtachan, Brihitan, Mishi, Shastaham, Shadimam, Tvam, Prapanam. The point which Arjuna came to, which was he understood that he was bewildered. He accepted that. He put forward some arguments. He was in a situation which was the last situation he wanted to be in, where he had to face up to fighting against his family members, teachers, etc. So we may not necessarily have to come up against such a hurdle, but he couldn't see the point in doing that because everybody who they would be fighting for they'd be fighting against as well. The reasons for fighting would be to create some peace in the kingdom, but either side was going to be vanquished. So he was thinking it was pointless, because even if we do win, then those who would like to enjoy the kingdom with won't be here to enjoy it with. So he had some very good reasons, on the material platform. But as it was Krishna's will, then it was going to happen anyway, with or without Arjuna. So he became, even as a Kshatriya, he understood dharmic principles. He understood fighting to protect innocent, but still he was bewildered by it. So he said to Krishna, now I'm confused about my duty because of my karpanya doshopa tasvabhava. Karpanya means kripana, miserly mentality. I've lost all composure due to miserly weakness, and in this condition I'm asking you for certain what is the right path to follow. And therefore, Krishna, so he said, now I'm a disciple, Shishyastiham Sham Tvam Papanam, that I'm a disciple, a Shishya, and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So only in this mood can we actually accept spiritual knowledge. If we think we already know something, it's like we say to Krishna, okay, tell me something, but if I agree with it, I'll accept it. If I don't, then I won't. So it's got to fit in with my understanding of things. Otherwise, so we think we're on this platform, we can pick and choose. Krishna says this, so accept that, but I don't accept that, because it doesn't sound morally right to me. But we don't know, because we're so bewildered. The first fact is, if we can accept that we're bewildered, we don't know right from wrong. Because what is our right from wrong based on? It's based on our conditioning, our uncontrolled senses. And what is the basis is right or wrong for how it's going to please me. And therefore, have so much eclectic spiritualism going on in the name of spiritualism, where people pick and choose. Now, picking and choosing is okay if you have a right basis for it. But if your basis is basically that whatever feels good to you, if someone is a psychopath that it feels good to go and murder people, we say, well, leave him alone. It feels good. It's all right. Don't disturb the person. It makes him feel good. There was this saying, if it feels good, do it. But it's not about feeling. What Prabhupada says, if you're feeling wrongly, thinking and feeling and willing, these are three traits of the mind. Correct. Thinking, feeling, and willing. Just like Prabhupada says, the chanting is the thinking. Not that we become brainless or thoughtless, but sometimes we can overthink things and we start to see things which aren't there. Whereas Prabhupada says this, Krishna consciousness is so simple that you can miss it. Simply we just have to chant Hare Krishna and realize Krishna is present in the form of his holy name, and all knowledge which is actually relevant to the spirit soul and the spirit soul's relationship with Krishna will be revealed. But we often still like to feel like we're in control. So many things are happening out with our control, but yet we think we're in control. For starters, there's the threefold miseries. So what are the threefold miseries? Anybody mention any one or three of them? Right. What's that called? Adidivaka klesha, and anything else? From other living entities, that's called Adibhotika klesha, and another one from our own mind and body, that's Adi-atmika klesha. Atmika as in Atma. So sometimes the Atma is referred to the body or the mind or the soul, different levels of people's perception of the self. So with these threefold miseries we have no control over, but yet we still want to be the controller. But the good news is we actually can be the controller by surrendering to Krishna. So as long as we're in the material world, these three kleshas, threefold miseries, will be affecting us. We cannot avoid that. But how it affects us, that we have some control over us. It's just like one may find themselves in a situation whether poverty-stricken or sick or some other kind of disadvantage. Now, we could have a positive attitude, or we could have a negative attitude and wallow in self-pity. Oh, I'm such, woe is me, I'm so unfortunate. We can be like that. Or we can look at the bright side of it, and there's always someone worse off than yourself. And as a devotee, even if there isn't somebody worse off than yourself, then you can always think, this is temporary, this will pass, this is a reaction, which is freeing me from my sinful reactions of the past. Just like a few weeks ago, I was riding my bicycle and I came off it and I had quite a nasty fall. But funnily enough, I felt purified after it, and I thought, well, that's one less reaction to come my way. And sometimes this would happen. There's an old saying, you're looking well, have you been sick? Anyone ever heard that saying? So sometimes, physically, if you're sick, then your immune system works hard to get rid of it. So when you get rid of it, then you're actually feeling quite well again. But also on the more subtle level, because if we've been sick, it means that we've passed through some karmic reaction, and therefore we're coming out the other side. Just like when the cloud comes in front of the sky, it gets dark, and then it goes, and everything's bright again, and everyone's happy. But we shouldn't be so dependent on these things. This is where we have the control, is that we can remember that this has started, this will finish. This has started, this will finish. Anything which has a beginning has an end. If we're simply depending on favourable situations for our happy state of mind or stable state of mind, then we will be going up and down in waves of sukha dukkha, happiness and distress. Therefore, one of the first instructions Krishna gives is to learn to tolerate happiness and distress, shitoshna, summer and winter seasons, winter and summer seasons. So just as we begin one season and another ends, we know that even at that, this one will also end and the next one will come back again. So in this way we can become the seer of the truth, the sage who is observing so many different changes going on. The karma is coming and it's going and it's changing, but we remain the same. And all the while, we remain fixed in our Krishna conscious practice. And Lord Brahma says that by increments, then by tolerating the passing phases of karmic reaction and continuing with our devotional service, with our hearing, chanting, serving, etc., then in due course of time there'll be no more reactions if we're not engaging in any kind of karmic, V-karmic or Ugra-karmic activity. And in fact, the material world becomes not a source of entanglement, but a source of liberation. So the very thing which was the cause of our entanglement in the material world. So this is the examples which the spiritual masters show in this great King Gaia. He was also like that. He was such a great personality that it's considered that he was empowered, representative of the Lord. And so there's the verse, Yajad a chariti shrestas tatad evitaro janaha sayat pramanam kuruti lokas tadanuvartate. Does anybody know the English to this one? Whatever actions a great man performs, or woman, common people follow in footsteps, and whatever standards is set by exemplary acts, the whole world pursues. So people, they want to follow great examples. They have role models. It might be David Beckham as a footballer, or it might be some famous singer or sports person or whatever you're into. Might be some great scholar, writer, fashion designer, whatever it happens to be that you're into. There's some example that we aspire to be towards. But often these things which we're aspiring to are simply on the Sudra platform. Therefore, in Kali Yuga, people are bewildered. They don't even know a good example when they see it. But still, it behooves the devotees to be that good example. All of us, even Prabhupada said there was one devotee who was complaining. Prabhupada, oh, this devotee, blah, 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 blah. He was complaining. Prabhupada says, so, you can do better than you set the example. So we complain about somebody not setting an example, but we don't want to do it. We want them to set an example. Meanwhile, we're not even noticing the good things that they're setting an example of. Therefore, there's I can't remember if it's in the 11th canto, or the different types of spiritual masters that are there. It's like you could look at a bee and think, oh, I don't like bees, they sting you, so keep away from them. Or you could look at the bee and think, the bee is a spiritual master. He's one of the spiritual masters because he's not greedy. He doesn't take everything from that one flower and then leave it. He's such an example of how to live sustainably, this principle of isavasham, accepting only that which is necessary as one quota. So he takes a little quota from this flower, and a little quota from that flower. He doesn't just stay there all day and say, oh, let me cram this in here from this one flower, and I'll finish off early, get my feet up. He'll take a little from this, and then he'll spend all day just picking from all the flowers so that the flowers are all there again the next day. But this is such an example, of in the COP26, which is coming up in Glasgow, there's global concern for sustainability. They just have to look at a bee, and that's their answer. Just take a little bit, not too much. What is it they call that in Sweden? Lagom, a little, not too little, not too much, just enough. So this is the thing, if we are too austere, then we become frustrated, become upset, our mind becomes disturbed. So if we are not austere enough, then our mind is also out of control. So just to find that balance where we can exist with at least somewhat of a peaceful mind. There's enough disturbances come of their own accord. We don't have to create them. Just like one devotee was performing some austerities, and Prabhupada was hearing about it, and he says, so he spoke to him and says, so why don't you put glass on your shoe? If you want to perform austerities, put some glass in your shoe. He said it's pointless austerities unless it's there for pleasing Krishna. The goal is to please Krishna, and if we encounter austerities in the course of trying to please Krishna, that is acceptable. Not that we have to go out and make things difficult. It's like we're allergic to wool, so let's get a wool blanket and sleep under that, so we can't hardly any rest. And we've got something else. We're allergic to pollen, so we don't take any hay fever medicine. We just force ourselves to suffer our karma. We do what's favourable for devotional service. If it's going to be favourable, if it's going to stop us doing devotional service, then it means we're attached to some misconception of what is devotional service. So first of all, devotional service is what's prescribed to us, not what we just conjure up ourselves. If it's given, then it's devotional service. Like, it's a very nice example, simple. Spiritual master asks for a cup of water. The disciple goes away, gets the cup, and he thinks, milk's better than water, so let me get milk for the spiritual master. He'll be pleased with that. And then you bring it, and the spiritual master says, I've got a dairy intolerance. What you would bring this for? Ask for water. So it's very important, this hearing. That's what's called Shravanam Kirtan. First we have to hear. If we can't even hear simple thing that someone says, give me a cup of water, I'll give you something else which is going to be bad for you because I'm overthinking it. So therefore, Krishna consciousness is so simple. It's just hearing and remembering. But if there's always something about I, me, and mine in it, then we're going to find miseries in the material world. That's the fact. If we put Krishna first, then in due course of time all our miseries will be gone and forever. But we put ourselves first, and as soon as in a difficulty, oh no, I can't serve Krishna in these conditions. It's called conditional devotional service, not unconditional. So of course, we have to have a balance, not that we just have to do all in one day. Yet Prabhupada was asked a question, does it take many lifetimes to surrender to Krishna? Prabhupada said, 1 minute. He says, actually, you can do it immediately. We can surrender to Krishna immediately. We just have to decide. But we haven't decided yet, so we're thinking about it. Maybe I will surrender to Krishna. Maybe I'll surrender a little bit. Just like we're going, we see our friends are in the water, they're swimming about, and they're saying, come on in. We say, I'll just tip my toe in there and see if it's a bit cold, maybe I'll come back when it's a bit warmer. putting it off. But then when we get in to the water and we're swimming around with all our friends, we think, I should have done this sooner. I was just on the mental platform. Of course, this mental platform is no small thing. It's so strong that Arjuna said it's more difficult than controlling the wind. So it's not like, it's just a mental platform, get off the mental platform. Or as we say in devotee lingo, get off the MP and just get into it. So it is that simple, but in one sense, it's not that easy. And Prabhupada said this also, that I never said it would be easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And we overcomplicate things. We're looking for something more than it really is. And this is just because of our conditional nature, where the material world is a very complicated place. It's a complicated puzzle which we've been trying to figure out for many, many lifetimes. And we'll never figure it out because it's beyond our ability to figure it out. The frog in the well can't figure out what's beyond. He can't even figure out how his well was beyond his well, but he can't even figure out how water's getting in his well. He just knows it's there. And because he's the big frog, the bullfrog, he thinks he's in control. And then someone's waiting for him to slip. Apparently frogs are very envious creatures. In fact, all living entities in the material world are envious. That's why we're here. And this envy begins with trying to enjoy as Krishna. So just like the child says to the mother, I want the moon, sees the moon in the sky, can I have it? And try to catch it. And the mother knows, you can't have the moon, it's silly. But then the mother just gives the child a mirror and says, look, there you are, you have the moon. So the child sees the reflection of the moon. So Krishna, with the living entity, is like that. The child's like, I want to be the supreme enjoyer. Why you have to be the supreme enjoyer? I want a shot at it. So then he gives us a material world, which is a reflection, where we think, we have the ability to be the supreme controller, the supreme enjoyer. And then we're all competing here to be the supreme enjoyer, the supreme controller. I want to be the top dog. Okay, I'll let you be the top dog. And we're thinking for the time being, but I'm going to figure a way to move you out of that position so I can get in. And then as soon as you do that, then somebody wants what you've got. So this is it. Prabhupada was visiting Japan. The Dai Nippon printing press who printed his books in the early days. And funny side story from it, but Prabhupada was discussing with the head of the Dai Nippon press about the prices of the books. So actually Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada were there with the chief executive officer and his assistant. And Tamal Krishna was doing all the bargaining and the arguing about the prices of the books. And the man was saying this price, and Tamal Krishna was saying this price, and he was saying, no, too low, that's too low, we can't accept that price. And so they were trying to barter, and then Prabhupada came in and says, okay, let me settle it, we'll go for this price. He came in as if he was like some just neutral observer. And then the man says, yes, okay. So Prabhupada came in as a friend of everybody here. Let me settle it. As if there was some argument that he was settling and he was mediating them. And then they got such a really good price for the books. So Prabhupada was very clever. But anyway, so then the chief executive went out of the office and Prabhupada said to the assistant, so what's your goal in life? And the man took the business cards of the boss and he took his business card out and he put it on top. And Prabhupada said he wants to be the top guy. And this is because, he's serving the boss very, very favourably and looking after every need. But ultimately, he just wants to be in that position. And then as soon as he has somebody will want to put their card on top of his card. So this is going on. Competition in the material world. There's so much competition that only a fool will continue to try to run that race. We realize that this race is not worth running. Let's find a different race. That is ISKCON, that is Krishna consciousness. So back to the frog thing. There was they have this very mode of ignorance dish called frog's legs, and some restaurateur was importing frogs, and he was overseeing the import of the frogs or the export from the country. And they had them on a ship and they had them in an open tank. And he said, do you need to put a lid on it? They're trying to crawl out. And they said, no, no need to put a lid on the tank. Why not? He said, just watch. So they seen the frogs were climbing on top of each other. And as soon as one got to the top, nearly to the edge, someone would pull it off and then they would get there. And then that one gets to the top almost and then they would pull it off. He says they're just so envious. They don't want anyone to get ahead of them. So in the material world, this is going on. But we want to give that up because this struggle for supremacy, the mods are also competing for supremacy over the living entity. And that is us. We've been subject to this struggle for existence in the material world for so long. So let's not struggle with it any longer. Let's just surrender to Krishna. It's like you're struggling trying to stay afloat in the ocean, and someone comes along and says, here, take my hand, I'll help you. No, I'm doing fine. And we're bobbing underneath, and then sometimes coming up, getting a gasp, think, oh, that's great, oh, fantastic. Down we go again. And then back up again, thinking we're enjoying. And then someone comes along, the spiritual master comes along in the boat and says, here, take my hand, I'll pull you up. No, I'm okay, I'm nearly there. I don't need you, I've got this theory of evolution, that'll do me. I'm just about to get a lot of money, or I've got a beautiful wife or a handsome husband. I'm going to be okay. But still, we remain in the material ocean, up and down the waves. Sometimes we're up in the wave thinking, oh, great, I can see everything. I'm on top of the world, then we're down. Being in that condition, then our equilibrium is always out of balance. We can't see things properly. We're delirious. And Arjuna, he spoke this verse so that we can realize I am bewildered. I'm in this material world. I've been trying to enjoy for so long. And the enjoyment I get is small time. And it's very limited. And we don't know when it's going to be there or when it's not going to be there. We don't know when suffering's going to be there. It's very unsure. So there's always uncertainty in the material world. And but the thing which is certain is that we know we're going to die. But the fact beyond that is that we actually don't die. That's also another illusion. We don't die. We never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, and nor in the future shall we cease to be. We cannot conceive of coming into being, and we cannot conceive of not being and being and not being in existence. So this existentialism situation is very easily answered by Krishna, that there was never a time when we didn't exist, and there won't be a time in the future when we never exist. And even the scientific theory of thermodynamics or transformation of energy considered that the energy is just transforming from one thing, from potential to kinetic to heat to various other energies, but it's just that same energy is there. And of course, environmentalists would love to figure out how we can have this perpetual motion machine, which is you don't have to put anything into it and it just keeps on going and supplying. But that perpetual motion is the soul. There's always energy. The soul will never, can never be extinguished. It's not like a light. It's not like a candle is lit and then death comes and it's extinguished, the candle's gone. No, it's not. So that energy, which is a conscious living entity, that never diminishes either. So sometimes we become a bit, even as devotees, Prabhupada mentioned that the problem with the devotees is they don't see how dangerous Maya is. That we can hear about Maya and realize, yeah, that's true, we're in an illusion. We can accept that. But if someone tries to point it out, then we become defensive about it, or it becomes a source of misery because we don't want to be seen like that. But it's just like you go to the doctor and the doctor says, there's this and this and this wrong with you, and you say, no, I don't want to be seen like as having this ailment. But the fact is we have it. So the sooner we say face up to the fact, then the sooner we can get rid of that undesirable thing. We don't want to be seen as being envious or being nasty, lusty, angry, greedy. We don't want to be seen as being that. But if we don't have these things, then we wouldn't be in the material world. Sometimes it's difficult to see these things in ourselves. And I remember considering, well, I'm like this, but I don't really see that in me. And then sometime later I realised, yeah, I've got that as well. So it's good if we can first of all see the enemy, then we've got a chance. If we don't see the enemy, or we don't even want to see the enemy, then what chance do we have? Shooting in the dark. You may be shooting in the wrong direction. So all these other various types of conceptions, the origins of life, conceptions of absolute truth, unless it's actually coming directly, Dharmam tu Shakshad Bhagavat Paritam, unless it's coming from Krishna directly, then we may as well be shooting in the dark in the opposite direction. We can't manufacture something, a way of surrendering to Krishna. It comes from Krishna himself. So it's Maya is very powerful, and there was this story of the disciple who was struggling with his senses, mind and senses, and he was feeling under the influence of Maya, struggling with it, and then he goes to the spiritual master in distress and says, "Oh, Guru Maharaj, Maya just won't let me go. She won't let me go. I'm trying so hard, but she just won't let me go." So the spiritual master stands up and he runs out the temple, and the disciple thinks, "Oh no, I've really upset him, he just ran out the temple." So he follows him and he sees the spiritual master outside and he's hugging a tree and shouting, "Let me go, let me go." And the disciple realizes this is what's happening. I'm saying Maya won't let me go, but it's me that's holding on to Maya. So that way we're innocent. If it's Maya's fault, it's not me. I'm pure, I'm innocent, it's Maya, it's got me captured. But Maya just shows us something and we say yes, no, yes, no, yes. And then when we say yes to everything, then we have to say yes to the implications. And then when the implications come, it's like, oh no, I don't want that part of it. The half the hen philosophy, we want the egg, but we don't want to feed the chicken. I'll just take the egg, but we won't feed it. So eventually in the material world, nowadays, people don't even want to do any dharma artha or even consider moksha, they just want kama. So there's four things which are necessary in society: dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Religiosity, economic development, sense gratification and ultimate liberation. So to have some kind of peaceful society, those things are there. Of course, devotees, they can surpass these things because they go directly to Krishna. But the general mass of people, if there's no religiosity in their life, they're not performing charity or any kind of making any type of sacrifice, and even so that's dharma or even artha, economic development. Often people don't even want to go and work for the money; they just want money handed to them. Just give me dough, and I'll just sit here and philosophize or complain about how I'm not getting enough dough money to buy all my intoxicants. The world owes me a living. The fact that I'm alive, somebody should just be providing for me. This is such a tamas gun, mode of ignorance, conception of trying to be supreme controller, because who wants to support some lazy fool? So even people who are just so lazy, they don't even want to work, they just want to win the pools or win the lottery, so we don't have to work. But actually work creates character in person. And Krishna says that he says that although there's no work ascribed to me, if I do not work by maintaining the whole cosmic manifestation, everyone will be put into ruination. So Krishna doesn't have to work. It's not like he has to maintain the material world. He can say, okay, can't be bothered with it. I'm just going to enjoy, and you guys just disown you. And we'd be like, oh, come back, Krishna, I can't breathe. There's no sunlight. There's nothing growing. So he says that one cannot maintain one physical body without work. So we'll have to do some kind of work. And if we just want everything provided to us, then it means either we're using up our past stocks of good karma, where it comes to the point that we will just have to do without, or we're going to have to pay the price in the future life, where we're going to have to serve people and get nothing in return for it. So one way or another, the material world is such a complicated ruse that the only way really is when we become so exhausted is to look for some help to get out of it. Just like you're in a maze. Sometimes some of these fairgrounds or stately homes would have a maze, and it may be so tricky that you just practically can't find your way out. And at the end of the day, someone who's the caretaker of the maze will just come through, make sure nobody's stuck in there, and he knows the whole thing. He's got the map, and he say, okay, come on this way. And no, I've been that way. That doesn't work. No, I'm telling you it works. You go this way, but then you go that way. No, I don't believe you. I'm going to stay in and find my own way out. But I've got the map. So we've got the Shastra. This is the map, the way out of the maze. And the person who's the caretaker is the spiritual master. He's saying, look, I know this. I've been in and out many times. I know. And the guy's in the maze so long, he think, actually, I'm just going to stay here. There's things growing on the bushes. I'll just eat them. I'll just set up camp. And he said, don't be a fool. Then, no, it's okay. I'm quite happy in the maze, actually. I quite like it here. But some of the hedges have got thorns in them. That's okay. You've got to take the rough with the smooth. This is the material world. We think, in order for the living entity to tolerate the material world, we come up with sayings and philosophies like, you got to take the good with the bad, the rough with the smooth. Yeah, that's if you don't want to be eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Then you do. You have to take that. You've no choice. And of course, in a positive way, we can say, okay, accept things as they are. But the goal of someone saying take the rough with the smooth is because they're always looking for the smooth, but they have to accept the rough until the smooth comes back. That's what we're looking for. It's not they're relishing that, but a devotee can relish both because they see that this is Krishna giving me a chance to make advancement again. Even Queen Kunti, such an advanced devotee, she was praying that let calamities happen again and again, because by these calamities I'm remembering Krishna. So we shouldn't fake that as well. We shouldn't okay, let me just look for some difficult situation so that I can remember Krishna. Remember Krishna when things are good, so that when times are difficult, we automatically take shelter in Krishna. I think we were talking about that the other day, were we? What was it again? We were thinking that, in the times when we're not struggling so much, then the way to be steady in this happiness is use that time to take on Krishna consciousness, so that when the times when we are struggling, then we're accustomed to being Krishna consciousness. So this is a way where we can become steady in both happiness and distress, is to be engaged in Krishna consciousness, regardless of what's going on externally. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport to Bhagavad Gita 2.7 that by nature's own way, the complete system of material activities is a source of perplexity for everyone. And every step there's perplexity, and therefore it behooves one to approach a bona fide spiritual master who can give one proper guidance for executing the purpose of life. So therefore, great devotees like Maharaj Gaya and all the spiritual masters in the disciplic succession and the followers of those, then we see those examples and we try to take those examples. And it may be that perhaps someone is not a good example in everything, but we can see some good example in one way. It's like when we have Vyasa Puja and we hear devotees speaking, we think, wow, I didn't know that devotee was deep in that way. Even sometimes the youngest devotee, they can say things which are inspiring to even older devotees. So everyone can inspire everyone. And we may have so many faults like this, but we have some good, which is the main thing. So the old example of the stool fly finds one piece of stool in a field of flowers, and the honeybee finds one flower in a field of stool. Sometimes you go to India, in the rural parts, they don't have public toilets. Public toilets are public. It's a field. You go out to a field and you do your business. But there might be one flower, seeds went there and it sprouted up, and the bee will find it. So even if someone has many different examples which are not to be followed, they may have something which is good to be followed. And even examples which are bad examples, then that can be an example as well. So that's an example we don't follow. But it has to be based on Shastra, not based on, well, I think this, I think that, not just based on our subjective thing, which may be changing any time. And therefore, sometimes it's even confusing when people hear a great devotee like Srila Prabhupada. They may even speak about a good quality of someone who's a very demonic person. They're like, oh, how can they speak good about Hitler or about this one or that one? Because you see the spirit soul, the eternal spirit soul, and even when there's bad example, you'll see some good message out of it. We take something good out of it. Not saying that there was not glorifying some demonic person, but if someone is looking for the good, they'll find the good. And it's not that it justifies any bad that the person does, but they can find the good. So maybe shouldn't use Hitler as an example, but he's not a person that uses a good example in any sphere. But the point is that even if someone has got so many bad examples, sometimes we can see some good quality, or we can see an example of what is not to be done, so that we make sure we don't follow that example. So in that sense, the devotee sees everything as an example, and if you have the association with so many people, then you can find examples of different things, like someone may be very good at attending the morning program, somebody may be very brahminical, somebody may be very steadfast in their particular service, someone may be very flexible in the service, so we can see so many different things which are examples for us to follow. And ultimately, the material world, there's Prabhupada mentions in the third canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, the influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire, but by the process of seriously discharging devotional service, this influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. So therefore, the material world although it may be the cause of our material desire or blazing fire of lust, or it may be cause of our entanglement, then also becomes the cause of our liberation, because when we learn how to utilize it in Krishna's service, then it becomes the source of liberation. Okay, I'll just stop there. Anyone get any questions or comments?
A quick question about tolerance regarding you were talking about three-fold miseries, arising from being so mind, something that I've been trying to cultivate balance, because I've been very good in such a state of ignorance in the past, of just ignoring the body and not having a sense of grounding, and then the body gets so sick that everything just crumbles and it needs like complete focus to regain health. So how can we distinguish between, like you gave an example actually a few weeks ago about if you need to go to the toilet and you just think, oh, I'll just tolerate it. Like, that's nonsense. Like, the body has certain needs. So how can you distinguish between self-care and tolerance and neglect to strike a balance so that the service is sustainable?
So the principle to always remember in that regard is we do what is favourable for devotional service, and then we just have to be honest with ourselves. Am I using this as an excuse, or am I actually doing this so that I can, like say for example, we have some material ailment, and to neglect that would be, it's going to get worse and it's going to diminish your service in due course of time. To take care of it would mean, okay, I can't quite do this, but I can do something else. Is there something else I can do? Not that, well, I can't do this, so come back and see me in a couple of weeks and I'll see if I'm going to offer service or if it's still not right, and then I'll just prolong my holiday. So is it, and then, so that's, we've got neglect would be that it's going to make it difficult if we ignore it. And to take one step back so we can take two steps forward, that would be the thing. Not that we take one step back and we never take that other step forward again, and then it becomes an excuse. But then it also mentions that a pure devotee, it by it means it in the Shastra, it mentions that a pure devotee neglects his body, but to imitate that is not recommended. Otherwise, we become unable in due course of time to perform devotional service. We may become so sick, or we may die because we don't take care of something which is there. If there's some symptom, the symptom's there to tell us there's something wrong, so we should take care of it. If by doing all you can to take care of it and it still doesn't sort it, then it may be that it's your karma, you can't avoid it. But if we give up devotional service completely to go chasing around some cures of the body, then that wouldn't be recommended. Like sometimes people become bewildered by that and they become weak in their spiritual life. And we do have to do something practical, because we're not so pure that we can just read and chant all day long. Prabhupada says that devotees try to do this in the beginning stages. They simply start to think of sex life or how to make money or whatever. They just become distracted, so therefore we have to engage in something practical. But there's so many services can be done, and if we can also come up with ideas how we can do service. So if we desire to perform devotional service, then there's nothing can stop us. There's a book called Salted Bread. Anybody read that book? If you read that, you can see that there's nothing can stop you becoming a devotee. Devotees there. I don't know anybody who read that book and hasn't cried, because it's so amazing. Amazing in the sense that devotees were imprisoned. I think they were originally from Georgia. Is that right? Do you remember? And then they were distributing books in Russia. They got imprisoned and they were tortured. But they still became devotees, and they were using their toothpaste to make tilak, And the bread, the only food they got was salted bread, but instead of eating it, they would let it go hard, or they would soak it in water and make it into little balls, and then they'd string beads out of it. So they had their beads and they had their tilak, and they just wouldn't give up their Krishna consciousness no matter what. And at least one of them lost his life in that situation. So therefore we can see that if one is determined, Krishna will give the intelligence by which we can come to them in any situation. But at the same time, so it's kind of based, what is it? I think in Buddhism they say, be careful what you want because you might get it. So if our desire is to go to Krishna, even if we don't really know what that means, we can pray to Krishna, that we get the strength to go to him, because we hear that Krishna is the resting place of all living entities. He is the shelter, the only shelter really. So we want that. We don't know what it takes, but we can pray to Krishna to give us the strength to go towards him. But if we want something else, then we may get that, but then we have to be satisfied with that. Is that okay? So it's just whatever is favourable for devotional service. There's the short term and there's the long term. But if we have to step back to do something for the long term, then we have to make sure we do it in such a way as that we can't step forward again, that our Krishna consciousness is diluted. Okay. ISKCON Gurvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premananda.